Peace and long life. And hello to all you bots out there. Yeah, computer generated bots. There's plenty of them. I got a hold of a refractometer. Yeah, I can't turn. Oh, wait a minute. I can turn the screen here. There you go. There, refractometer. 10 to 30 degrees C. That's its operating range. Yes, that's my sweetheart right there. And that's my hearing protection for what I have left. All right. Now, no, that didn't switch the way it was supposed to. Come on here. There we go. Refractometer. What does that mean? Automatic temperature compensation. I just got this thing off of eBay because I forgot where I had my other one. Then I found it. It's similar to this one. What do we do? Well, the idea of a refractometer is first there's a scale in there. You have to take the little bugger here and turn it to focus so you can see the scales that are internal in here. Next, see this little floppy deal? You want to be careful. After that, you have to fill that, but you have to tip it up. Put a drop of antifreeze on there. Slowly put this thing down so it doesn't splash, and then check it to be sure the screen is completely covered, or at least 3/4 of it. And what does that do after that? Well, the angle and everything is set up so when you look internally in here, if there's nothing on it, all you're going to see is the scale. And you're going to have some pretty bright light to see it. You're not going to be able to see it. However, you can see there's a lot of blue in there. Well, that's the idea. The scale is way back in there. And it's blue, then it has black markings. What happens? I put a little drip of water on there, or antifreeze, or anything else that's fluid, water-based, that is, and it'll give you the picture in there with a line. The blue suddenly has a white line to it. And where the two lines meet is what you read. If your antifreeze is mixed properly, or the new stuff, you're going to see right around 35 degrees Fahrenheit. You say, it's 34! Yeah, you dork. It is 34. But guess what? 35 is close enough. You don't even start to get worried until you're down to 25. Here in the Northeast, we don't care. It'll still work. In fact, 20 below it'll still work, unless it's long term. That's crazy. I don't recommend 20 below for two reasons. One of them is, as much as this only gives you a freeze point. Now, this one, the old dogs, let me get my glasses back on here, because I'm not sure this one does. The other type that has the little pivoting floaters, the smaller one, well, on this side is freeze protection, and that's all this one does. The old type with the little floater actually will give you a boiling point. Why? Because these things read the approximate mix level, the viscosity, so to speak. More coolant, thicker, floats more discs. More coolant, antifreeze in the mixed with the water, then the more of the screen turns white. It's totally blue now. Well, you can see blue right there. Now here's the funny part about this one also. You know, you're sitting there saying, well, how in the world does that? Well, you'll notice it's rough too. That's to help hold it in place, otherwise it blows out. The other thing that you have to remember with this thing is it needs to be calibrated occasionally. Just checked, because temperature will change this and that. How do you calibrate it? You clean the screen and everything off like you're supposed to. Get a little paper towel in there, something very absorbent, because that rough area needs to be completely cleaned out. Gently, because this tiny stuff here isn't ideal, but it does work well. Now, you're not fully certain that it works right, well, you calibrate it against one or two of these, not just one or two. Right there, I took that little rubber plug off. See that little screw in there? You turn that up and down until at the bottom of the scale is 32 degrees. Well, then put clean water on here, and turn the screw until you look in here and see the white line and the blue line meet at 32 degrees. Yeah, the used car guys can really play with this thing. But like I said, if you're anywhere around, in the wintertime, you can go 40% or 40 below. And normally you can go 35 or even 30 below being the maximum freeze point. And here in the Northeast, you're going to be fine. 25, you're okay. but if it's long term outside that it's at minus 20 or minus 25, they're giving you a freeze point. Doesn't mean it won't turn to slush. Trust me on that one. Oh, I saw it. Not even in farm tractors. I'm serious. I didn't even see that problem on farm tractors for years. Construction equipment, particularly at Anderson. Then finally they had trouble with enough machines. Hey, maybe we should check our coolant. You mean like we just did? My buddy Kevin was main one in the rental fleet check-in, check-out. And he'd been checking them for a couple of months. About the time it hit October, he'd been doing some checking so they could get it into the system, get it up to this level, and then get it past the idiot at that level to get it to the next joker at this level so that finally the message could come down to this level. And before this idiot balked at it again, finally said, oh yeah, if it freezes, it's my fanny. You better get this done. Why'd you let it go? Seriously. And they had a few machines freeze up. Anderson is one of the most carbuncle companies I have ever seen or worked for in history, and that includes some that one guy ran himself into the poorhouse. Took his daddy's business over and spent himself into the poorhouse in less than 5 years. No, not from anything else. Giving stuff away to his friends and just spending money like an idiot on toys. That's it. Customers like the guy better than his dad. So what do we have here? This one is an old-fashioned. Thexton is the big company for this. Got your discs in there, and they're actually labeled. If only the red, blue, white, and it says how many discs are floating. Will give you an idea of what it is. Plus 25 to, yeah, I know. Studio lighting and my glasses, my eyes. You see, Andrew, I can't fix for the cataract. Yeah, but they put in the same lenses I had before. Almost identical. Actually, they put two of the same lenses in. And because this eye has a different shape, due to a soccer ball when I was 19. Or was it 18? It was 18. Anyway, okay, if one disc floats, the red, 25. If the blue, plus 25. Yeah, you're barely below freezing. If two floats, that's the red and the blue. What do you got? Yeah, you've got plus 5. That's it. You're getting closer. 3 floats, so that'd be the white, red, and blue. 3. You got minus 10. 4 is 25. So now you're talking 4, you're safe. Not good, but you're relatively safe in the Northeast. Do you go much further north from where we are here in the southern tier of New York, right along the PA's western border end? No. And then there's 5, which is another green disc, or the green disc. You see that one in the air? You're good. And then when the orange one is up, it just plain says that's all 6 of them floating. That's no good. Why? Because it's too thick. No, wait a minute. I know. Stop. If you're in Alaska, all 5 discs floating, that's not necessarily bad. Or is it? The reason they recommend 34 below is that the majority of the planet, except in extreme cases, that's a 50-50 mix. If all of them float and you know that bottom one just floats, you're probably in a 45 degree below range, which will get you into 60 to 75% mix. Where would you use that? Possibly northern Canada, up by the bay, northern Alaska, not lower Alaska, not southern. Their weather isn't much different than here in New York, strangely enough. And not New York here at the southern tier, more central state, particularly in the east side. Why? Because there's no lakes there to help moderate things or to cause extra wind. It's windy enough just because of the altitude in some areas. I was on Sharon Hill and Sharon Springs. I forgot what the actual elevation was, someplace around 1,700 feet where we were, something like that, 16. Not too much different than the hilltops here. And the wind would blow from the west, howl right down through on the Sharon Springs village side. And over Cherry Valley, well, bypasses they call it, going over the hill to Canajoharie, Fort Plain, and places like that. They'd blow through there. Awesome. So we had drifts and such, and then you'd have more trouble with freezing where you sit there saying to yourself, well, it's, and that's the other part with this is pretty coarse and crude. When you're at 10 and then it jumps to 25, now you don't know. That's a big 15-degree difference. Where are you? You need to know something a little more specific than that. So what do? You aim for the 34. The 34 is 50-50 mix, and the ideal part about the 50-50 mix is as much as it's 34 degrees as far as freeze point. It takes the boiling point to someplace around, what was it, 215, 210, somewhere in there. And it might even be higher, but it does take the boiling point of water that's, well, what is it, 212. So it would take it higher to about 220, 225, in that range. If you guys are playing in the Celsius at 100 degrees, you figure it out. So it takes your boiling point up as well. And they say, well, then put more and the boiling point goes up and the freeze point is not enough to say so. And you come into another problem. If you put more ethylene glycol in there, your viscosity increases, which means it doesn't circulate as well. It can't remove heat. It's bad. I know guys in the past, one guy I know it's better because I did it. And I'm listening to him yell and scream. It's like, no, you don't understand it. He blew a cork on me. Screaming and screaming. Okay, fine. I had to walk away from it. Somebody said, well, you're wrong. I said, no, I'm not. I said, if it's worked for him, that's fine. But that's not necessarily good to have straight antifreeze in there. And there were a lot of people that used to do that. Why? Because they had one thing happen bad or saw one thing happen bad. And because they were ignorant, they freaked. And in each case I ran into them, they were a pure narcissist, pure adulterated narcissist. Everything they did was correct, and don't you question it. So what do? You don't question it. Then all of a sudden, 6-8 months later, I hear, my van overheated. Shazam. But my boil point was up. Why in the world? Because it couldn't circulate. And the actual coolant is the water. Antifreeze is boil over and cool. Freeze up protection. It's protection. It's not the actual functioning factor. Will it? Sure, to a certain extent. It removes some heat, but not like water. Just saying. And if it can't circulate well enough, you'll cook it. Duh. Sorry to put it that way, but serious. It is that critical. Now, let's starting over again. If some of you want to argue with me, knock yourself out. I don't care. Go to another channel and listen to them. Now, this guy only tells you freeze point. So you don't know what your boil over protection is. And then you can get the cheap one, and it'll give you a rough scale. Look at your antifreeze bottle. The old stuff will give you an idea. There actually were charts on the back of the old mixed types, the full strength antifreeze that you had to mix with water. They'd give you the chart so you knew how much. In fact, if you read the chart and you knew you were only at 20 below in here, then you had a rough idea how the mix was. You could drain a certain amount out, pour the antifreeze in, drive it around, mix it up, and you might hit it first or second shot. The guys told me before, well, that'll tell you how much to mix. No, it's a guessing game still, but it's not a bad chart to use for remixing. But if you have to remix it and it got that low, that usually means there was a problem. Somebody dumped in water. Deionized water is the best, but you need good, clean, filtered water in there, period. And don't go buy mineral drinking water unless it's the highly filtered stuff. Because good tasting mineral water, like we have here in the southern tier, like the guy down here has Chemung, or his competition, Poland Springs up there, don't use their water in your engine because they have minerals in it to make it taste good. It's designed for you to drink and go through your kidneys well. Be great for your palate and your health, not your engine. So, that should help some of you to some extent with this. This thing, I think, cost me $25. You know what these used to cost? $125. And if you bought a unit made by Leica Company out in Buffalo, New York, Leica that builds optical for hospitals, telescopes for science institutes and such. I bought one for $75 back in 2000 from the Mac guy up in Albany, New York. I can't remember his name. John, I'm thinking it is. Great guy. He wasn't a salesman. You wanted to buy it, and he had it for you. You got a question, he'll get you an answer. But he just wasn't somebody to come in and push you around. Unless, of course, you owed him a bill, then they drive off with whatever you didn't pay for. All good toolmen will do that. Well, anyway, John was telling me, he says, you had to get it. You're the first one to take a bite on that. I said, why? And I said, well, it's one of the best units. At that time, that unit was valued someplace around 200 and something, $300. And then I went and checked and found out that the replacement cost was about $400 25 years ago. Yeah, it was that accurate a unit. I had that until recently here. It died. Yeah, it's been on a truck. I've been driving around, banging all over the place, no problem at all. Then all of a sudden, recently here, it was gone. I think it got moisture in it somehow out in the shop. Yeah, that was a disappointment. However, I had it for 25 years. Used! Let me tell you, if you can afford a Leica unit, you buy the Leica unit. It's simpler, easy to see, optics. I mean, they've improved, so your $25, $30, $50 units. Well, that's identical to the one I bought from Mac and Snap-on. No, it is not. It'll look identical. Now, this one also has propylene glycol battery, your acid content in your battery, I forgot what electrolyte level, and urea in your DEF fluid for your newer stuff. It has all four. If you can delete your DEF legally, please get rid of the SCR units on your machine. It's twofold make it a disaster. One of them is you can't catch all the urea that's been turned into ammonia just by going in the exhaust stream. Ammonia, and it locks up some of the nitrous that they're trying to get a hold of, the NH, NH2, NH3, and they're trying to turn it into NH whatever, ammonia going out the other end. That's all they're trying to do. But they have a catalyst here to start the process, finishes the process, and then they have to have a catch catalyst. They got a fancy term for it that doesn't describe what it actually does. It's to capture all the ammonia that hasn't been used up in the stream. That's what it's for. So you have an engine, even if you can get rid of the DPF because you got it burning clean, you have an engine with 3 catalytic converters in it. 3 coated in heavy metals. Please don't tell me that that's eco. It's not. Don't tell me it's environmental. It's not. You're spraying ammonia at the end result into the air in the exhaust stream. Guess what the worst so-called greenhouse gas is on the planet? You got it. Ammonia. These people are insane. They've got blinders on. We fixed the nitrous oxide! Well, yeah, and you threw something else worse into the air. The worst of it is, the planet is designed with the ozone layer to burn that stuff off. That's why the ozone hole does this. Way back in the 80s when they were screaming about the ozone hole and how horrible Ronald Reagan was, that he wasn't taking concern about it. And then by the time the 80s ended and it got into the next, all of a sudden the hole was gone. Why? The planet got cleaned up, volcano activity reduced, and suddenly the problem disappeared. I was told in 8th grade, 1975. I can't even remember the teacher's name. They used to have a nasty little nickname for her, too. She looked like Esmeralda with her big mole in the hair out of it. Literally, she never trimmed the hair, so it wasn't good. True scientist, though. And she sat there and says, I'm trying to figure out why. I said, sure, I want clean water. I want clean air. I want all this stuff clean. We have been polluting. Excuse me. But she said, the gases we're cleaning up now are stuff that's natural in the environment, brought off by decay, and natural rot of bodies and plants and trees and volcanoes and other activities. She says, why are we going overboard? Sure, clean it up. But it's not like it's going to kill us. At the time, they told us we were going to have an ice age and run out of oxygen. We were going to die with CO2 all over the planet. You know where the actual problem was? Oh, they showed people wearing oxygen masks. I mean, they really made it dramatic. It was nasty. It was bitter. I mean, we're talking, there was no science. It was all drama. So I sat there at 15 years old thinking, something's wrong here if you can't give us any numbers and facts and even give me a pretty colored graph. They couldn't do that. We were going to have an ice age because of CO2, and we wouldn't be able to breathe because of CO2 and carbon monoxide from all these cars in the world that are killing and destroying the planet. And it wasn't too long after that, 1978, I graduate, get into college, and start listening to the Jimmy Carter Felger carb that was coming out of there. And then the 1980s rolls around, and the real science comes out. You know what we found out? The problem was in the cities. It was never in the rest of the nation. In fact, because it was concentrated in the cities, there was a problem. The same thing they were trying to clean up was no problem anywhere else in the entire nation. Just the cities. Well, yeah, but the cumulative effect of all the cities around the world. The rest of us, as you saw in the last election, the rest of us red folk, it wasn't a problem anywhere. Even with the diesels blowing off black smoke that the farmers were actually sitting there looking at, we're not making money as easily as we could before, and that's raw fuel going into the air, and we don't like it. We the people changed that. We don't like this fuel mileage stuff. We don't like our cars rotting out. Huh? We don't like paying for gas that much. We don't like the first emissions on cars in the United States. You know what it was? I kid you not. It's a real deal. They blew air into the exhaust, put a sniffer in, and diluted it and said, see, we're meeting emission standards. That's it. There was no catalytic converter. It was raw air. On a tractor, a gas-driven excavator or loader or something else, it would have worked. It would have finished burning the raw fuel on the way out. But it still would have had hydrocarbons. Some particulates, not as much. But they were diluting the stream and telling you it was cleaning up the air. When they put the catalytic converter in there, they had to have it. But the catalyst heated it up enough so that it could be effective. Well, we were just implementing, you were lying to us the whole time, costing us money. And if they'd allowed things to continue as they were, the technology that kept improving, because nobody wants to believe that we had a hemispherical engine in a Lincoln Continental that could get 40 miles per, or what was it, 40 miles per gallon at 45 miles per hour. Mechanically injected, central injection, similar to what GM's trying today, direct injection in the cylinder, which needed a special spark plug and a special injector. And they were already up to, why didn't they do it? They couldn't. Oh, the oil company, no, the oil companies didn't buy it. It was a partial failure. In the cities, it doubled pollution. The car would go idle. It would have the fireball in the middle of the chamber because it operated like a diesel. You were changing how much fuel was going in there. You weren't changing enough of the air. And it would insulate the chamber, and the fireball would be in there, and it would still push on the piston just like it should at idle any other time. But it would insulate the chamber and cool right down. You pull up to a traffic light, it's cold, and out the back was going hydrocarbons like unreal. But on the highway, it's phenomenal. And they didn't have the technology to be able to lean it out to change that. So they stopped. It's too expensive to make it work. But here's the idea today, because someone did it back in 1963, 64. But we didn't have the electronic technology that we started having in the 70s. Multi-port fuel injection and such. Even central fuel injection. And now they have direct fuel injection, as they had in the 60s. But it had a problem because of technology. We were already headed there, people. And these jackasses in Congress, they just sit back. Yeah, we're going to make it work. We're going to force it down their throat because we know they can do it. They did it. No. You morons don't know what you're talking about. The other part is recycling. They have no idea what they're doing with recycling. You realize that 75% of our plastic is never recycled, and it's harder to find plastic stuff recycled in the lumber mills now, or lumber stores. Why? It's too expensive. Nobody wants to buy it. Pressure-treated stuff works better. They changed the pressure-treated formula so it didn't work as well. Now you have two formulas because you need stuff in the ground that is fully treated. So now you have to buy separate pressure-treated stuff because they screwed up and just, you're going to accept this. Nah, no, we won't. bituminous was bad. You think arsenic isn't in the soil? These people are out of their flippin' minds. The government needs to get out. Give us the warning of the chemicals that are in there. Yes, we'd love that. That's nice. We'll make our decision. I don't care that you don't like red dye number 5. That's not your problem up there in D.C. You idiots can't even balance a checkbook or take care of a credit card with a massive limit. And don't talk to me about any of this crap. Just, sure, the Food and Drug Administration. Tell us what's in and out of the stuff. Believe it or not, our drugs were safer before they got involved. Why? Because pharmacists and doctors depended on it being good stuff. And they were trained on it, not some jackass lawyer who doesn't have brain power left enough to handle the information. Yes, but no, you're not in charge. You have authority, but you're an idiot. All of them. Now that I've done that, done this, beat the dead horse, I think we can all agree that the next continuing resolution is coming. Whether you're a red or blue voter, I don't care. Our Republicans just jackassed us right up the wazoo. And they're no different than Reid, Pelosi, Piglosi, Schmoozer, or Maggot Connell. We just got it jammed up our rear end with an entire Republican bunch. Happy New Year, America! Get the Preparation H out. You're going to need the suppositories when they get through with this. And, best yet, they're opting out of all healthcare programs that have anything to do anywhere except their own. Yes. Oh, and they gave themselves a $60,000 or $70,000 a year raise. Why don't they take the millions from that and give us a tax break, like permanent? They just reworked the highway out here to supposedly federal standards. Let me give you a visual of how that brand spanking new highway is. Ah! 65 to 70 miles an hour, you almost can't stay in the seat. Brand new. We're talking just a couple of months. You can see from the car 100 yards away a whoopee in the road, up or down. 100 yards away, you can see the waviness in the road in multiple locations within a quarter mile. If you think your government is here to help you, I don't care whether you're red or blue. You're going to get it too. Merry Christmas and a crappy New Year. But when you're done, remember, these things are, this is the funny part. This thing is more accurate. But either way, you're talking 25, 30, maybe $50 tops. If you buy a good one from one of the tool trucks, which I would highly recommend, or your local Napa store, because you know the quality you're going to get. This one says ATD, but there's a company, Thexton, that would be much better than this. Still, ATD is decent stuff. You know, get a name brand. Well, so why'd you buy the cheap one? Well, because I know how to calibrate it. And I have other things to check it, and I can't afford much more right now. I'm retired. I get a couple of bucks here and there to actually make part of a living. Not much either. Every once in a while, a big couple of $100s would drop in. It's like, whew, I can pay my bills ahead of time. But there are months here that, no, I escape my bills on the credit card until I get paid next month. Yeah. So I'm making recommendations to you that I paid for myself, can't necessarily afford, and can't afford not to. Last but not least, you have a wet sleeve engine. I don't care whether it's gas or diesel. Every 3 to 5 years, change your coolant, and I'd recommend 3. You say, why? Well, that's not even, yeah, it looks good, tests good, but you don't know what the chemical content is. And diesel in particular, but gas also, will pit through the sleeves if you're not careful. There's 2 ways to pit through the sleeves. You're going to hear cavitation, and you're going to hear electrolysis, or acids, or alkali. It doesn't matter, one or the other. Chemical imbalance will start to eat through the sleeves just like an acid. or lye, the opposite end of acid is low pH, and lye and others are high pH, alkaline. So if you have percentage of hydrogen that's very high, it'll start to eat. So that's what they call, there's caustic and then there's acidic. That's that kind of thing. So you get a chemical imbalance that can just sit there and eat through stuff. And the other one is they call pitting or cavitation. And what's cavitation? Well, in the diesel in particular, because of the pressures and the vibration from the actual compression going up and firing coming down at high pressure, because you have to have high pressure to heat the air to fire the diesel fuel, which is quite thick, by the way. It's thick to control the burn and to make the sleeve vibrate just because of the firing up top. And as it does that, the sleeve does this in and out from the pressures and such. And while it's vibrating in and out, the coolant can't necessarily follow it. And you say, that's not even, it's barely perceptible, yes. But that's all it takes. Break the molecules of the water apart. What's it do? It turns it into a vapor. And as it snaps into a vapor, to do that, you're changing states, which means massive heats immediately. And if it's not enough heat, it just breaks the molecules apart and takes a molecule off the sleeve each time it does that. So, yeah, how many times a minute do you think? 500,000, 250,000 per minute? And you run that engine in some cases in farm, 500 hours in construction, 1,000 hours, 1,500, 2,000 hours. If you get the wrong mixture in there as well, and you don't check your chemical content for the diesels, and run actually coolant that's made for a diesel, you'll even eat through a parent bore, I mean no sleeve block, that's in the parent casting, the hose board. You can even eat through that. Well, it's not a death knell for it. It might be a death knell if you keep running it as it is, but if you catch it quick enough, you pull the engine out, they bore a hole, they re-sleeve it, sometimes 2 sleeves. If it's a 6-cylinder, the back 2 are most effective. A 4-cylinder, the back 2, usually the back 1 in particular. And you can do a sonic test, but let me tell you from some experience there, you could do a sonic test to test the bottom, where it usually happens is in the bottom quarter to bottom third of the bore. But the problem there is that quite often it's only in a small area. You're 75% chance you're going to miss it. And that's just a good guesstimate from some experience. I probably put in a short time that I had an engine shop with a boring bar, I probably put in the neighborhood of 50 sleeves. So it's not a lot, but it's enough to know. In fact, in one of them, the piston came unglued in a propane truck and blew holes inside of it. It was a 366 Chevy, but it had the 427, 454 wall thickness. And I had plenty of meat to bore it out. Found that there was enough left, and I stuck in the sleeve. I think I had over 1/4 of an inch wall thickness. I mean, I put in a sleeve, baby. And it was still running a year later. I told him, I said, it's going to go fluff. Will it run? I said, well, yeah, but it'll be ugly. We'll do the rest of the work. Just get us a sleeve. You're on. How'd you resurface the black? I didn't. It wasn't available to. But I could get him a flat deck that would seal. So that's just to warn you that there are ways to fix the thing. Don't necessarily say, I need another block. Well, there are ways to repair it, and they will work and function normally. I did it with a couple of 7710 Fords. 7700 Blue Power Specials were noted to do it. If they worked them hard all the time, go out there plowing day after day after day, or chopping heavily, hay in particular, then they'd occasionally work right through it. Most of them that I saw had loaders on them, so they're changing speed. You're changing speed, that means there's acceleration and under heavy load, even for a short time, on and off. And we hit a few pinholes and fixed those. But the other sleeves were almost all, there was a bunch of gas engines that had it, and a couple of, a few Ford diesels. What was the one? It was a 7.3 naturally aspirated Ford before the Power Stroke. We put a sleeve in one of those. It was an oddball. It was like on the right-hand bank, I think it was number 2 or 3. It wasn't even the back bore. It was kind of odd. The guy got mad afterwards, and he started running all over the country telling him I screwed him, put in bars leaks. Why? He couldn't tell that I took the engine out and put it back in. He got laughed out of 3 places. A couple others checked it out for him. 3 other places laughed at him and said, "Get out of here." So why? So we know the guy that did the job, and if you can't tell the difference whether he pulled it out or not, he says, you ought to be the happiest guy on the planet. That made me feel pretty good. I had that happen several times. That was nice, but it cost. Yeah, you end up eating a lot of stuff to make it look like that. Still fun. I love the work. Back in my 30s, that was a lot of fun. Had to give it up in my early 40s, sadly. Very early. So that's it for the time. Refractometer, get you one. If nothing else, get you a couple of these. Never depend on one. You get one and it starts looking a little funky. These have the problem where they don't tell you. There sometimes is a mark up here, but you need to get it up in here into this range. There's a stop for the discs so that it doesn't go up into the bulb. Try not to get any coolant up here because now you have to clean the bulb out every time. And you should if you can. Not with straight water necessarily, but get it cleaned out as much as you can. If you have straight water and you're in a warm shop, that's what I would use. And then double, triple your coolant going in and out. It's worth it. These will work far more effectively, especially if you keep them clean, because some people claim that there's buildup on the discs, like the other type with the floater. They claim there's buildup on the floater. Maybe. But I haven't seen it over the years. I've just seen bad units that didn't work well, period. And they were cheap stuff like Amazon. Or your old Globemaster for you old guys. All right, I've had enough fun and blown 37 minutes here shortly. You guys be good. It's time for me to get back to work. Oh, yeah, I took time off. I'm doing nothing. I'm floating around here like in retirement. A, it's cold outside. B, my bad back has been bothering me terrible this morning. And now it's just starting to finally calm itself down. So, I'm retired. I take those times. Last but not least, if you're one of them old farts that's on here, one thing I would recommend for you is this Omron. No, none of these. I don't make any money on this thing. This is an Omron to check your blood pressure on your wrist. Is it accurate? I don't know. For me, it is. Put it on here. Soft tissue side. You put your arm with this unit about the level of your heart, someplace in there. Because if you go below your heart, it'll be high. If you put it well above your heart, it'll be low. Take your blood pressure. If you have blood pressure trouble and you just bought the thing, take your blood pressure once or twice a day, or several days a week. And you say, "What? You're an old fart. My blood pressure's fine." Sure it is, but track it. So when you go to your doc, you can say, and he says, "Your blood pressure's a little off today." You say, "Yeah, at a certain time the other day it was too," and you have a complete conversation with your doc about what's going on. And when you have it taken there and you have it taken here at home, now you have something to go by, which is very similar to these things. You always want to have that one little thing that you can always count on. And as my bride Debbie found out, her blood pressure was 150 something over 86. Her blood pressure's almost never been over 120. I took it once and it was over 120 and she felt like crap. That's why she wanted me to take it. I think it was during Kabuki. We both got the Kabuki. She wanted me to take her blood pressure because mine seemed to subside quicker than hers. She got 2 shots. It lasted almost a month longer. So I took her blood pressure now and then. It was higher. For her, it was 110s, 108, 115, in that range, normally with a doctor. So we had a baseline to go by. We knew whether this is accurate or not. Baseline for me. There's a lot of stuff that we do like this in the chemicals, and even in your chemical checking, if you decide to go, if you're smart enough with a fleet, that you have your oil samples done. Almost every oil change. Why every oil change? The main reason is it's not cost effective directly at all. Well, for one main reason, if something goes wrong, you catch it before it's catastrophic. For 2 reasons. One is you have an engine to overhaul. Number 2, you have a good core to return. And there's quite a few problems they could have found at J.P. Riley if the idiot would allowed us to continue with oil sampling, and if the dolts that were there doing the oil changes did the oil sample. There are several machines we could have caught with bad injectors because they would have had fuel in the oil, and a couple others that had coolant in the oil. So, well, how much? Well, when it comes to either one, none. Diesel, a little bit here and there, you might overlook because, yeah, I got a bad injector, I got to keep running it. This is not going to be catastrophic destruction. It's not going to be good, but it'll work. Whether coolant, as soon as you find coolant, you have a problem. Yeah, that's one guy yelled at me, an idiot, at Anderson. Well, how much? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Because there's none. Antifreeze destroys the oil immediately. And if there's enough antifreeze that you can detect it, it's destroyed oil. It doesn't take much of the ethylene glycol and its chemicals to remove the bearing laminations off your main bearings and rod bearings. I have seen such. And when it peels up and starts to roll over, then you lose connecting rods, cranks, pistons, sleeves, blocks. You get my point? It can happen with diesel. Rare. Why? Because it's an oil. It mixes. It thins it out. Yes. But it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened. So that's another one that you're playing a game either way. Do your oil samples. You can find a bad injector with it. And here's another one. It costs you about $4,000 to $5,000 to buy a snap-on unit for diesels. I mean an actual good meter, probably as much as $8,000 or more for a really good one. But to actually have a good meter that'll put in there and do a power test and an injector test, injector balance test, or power balance test. Both of them can do similar things because your engine's running and it's fire injectors on and off. Excuse me. And they'll have an injector cancel test for these new electronic things. And those things can find a problem that you just found an oil sample that's iffy. You plug this thing in and you run your power balance test and you find a cylinder that's down. What have you just done? You may have found a bad injector, bad compression, something there that you can check, diagnose, and decide if you want to keep going and blowing the engine up, or if you can plan your repair. Or you can say, I better do it now or I ain't going to have nothing to repair. So those things are critical. Oil samples are not cost effective. I'll say it again. In the long run, they cost you money. But their idea is that extra money is in stopping the catastrophic events, as well as it keeps the fleet up because you're making repairs without the destruction. You're planning the repairs that are being made. It saves you in time and the tow bills. Oh, Lord, the tow bills, especially if you're in a dump truck fleet. You could be 100 miles from there. You want to tow that puppy home? You can save a pile of money. So please, do your oil samples. Check your coolant and your antifreeze. Those are the two main fluids that you need to get your hands on. And your fuels once in a while. It wouldn't hurt to do some checking there to find out how much water and other contents in your fuel. And that's very expensive. But at the same time, what are you going to do it once a year, once every couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, and do some fuel sampling? It's well worth it. Because in another aspect of it, when a truck comes in for major, complete bumper-to-bumper service work, do your fuel sample in that tank. Because you may find out you have enough crap in the tank, you need to pull it off and clean it. You're in a fleet, every little bit that you're preventing downtime and preventing tow bills, you just saved it. Yeah, that fuel sample might have cost you $100, $200. Each time you send in an oil sample, it might be $50 or so. Yep, you're going to pay. As soon as you find that one problem that you can diagnose and fix in-house, and you're not paying $150 an hour for, or a tow bill, and a new engine, or transmission in some cases, yeah, you can oil sample your transmissions, your final drives, and other things too. We used to do that in the Komatsu system all the time. If it was a Komatsu service contract that they bought, we would sample everything. And to give an idea that all of a sudden there's a metal. It didn't tell you how much metal was any good or not. What it did tell you was there was a spike. And then it'll tell you to go back and change your oil again and check it again. And you say, well, yeah, but no, you might go a quarter of the way if you went 2,000 hours to change your oil in this final drive. And you got suddenly a bad sample compared to the last two, or at least the last one. And now they'll tell you to change it and go in instead of 2,000 hours, maybe go in at 500 hours. Check it again. And if it's high again, now you have to change it. You have to change it now. And the unit's still functional and operating, so you can get the parts and everything together to make the change before the bad event happens. and it's mobile. You're able to get it to where it needs to be. Do I need to continue on this? Just saying. It's not money saved here. The ignorant manager says, it costs me money. It does. Where it saves you money is on the other end. And on your, as far as your peace of mind is concerned. Your conscience. You know you tested your oil, you know it's good, and something catastrophic happens. You go back and check the past oil samples, 2 of them. You look at them and say, okay, it didn't show up. It's nobody's fault. It was something that was due to happen. Or you might go back and say, we found a bad oil sample and made the decision to move on. And you can write that into your notes too, because most places, even J.P. Riley had computer notes. That's saying something. So if I have all those things that are in there, you're in good shape. So that's my recommendations now. I killed 45 minutes in 54 seconds. Peace and long life.